At this point, Alan is like a king without a kingdom because all the Senate committees are now under the control of the majority headed by GATCHALIAN.
Senator Drilon, is the Senate presidency vacant, or because this is the contention of Senator Lacson, or is the Senator Cayetano still hold the position because he cannot be replaced since they need 13 votes?
The position of the group of Senator GATCHALIAN is that only 12 votes are needed to declare all positions vacant. And that's exactly what they did. They declared all the positions in the Senate, from the Senate President to the Senate President pro tempore, to all the chairman of the committees, to the membership in the committees. All of those were declared vacant by a vote of only 12, because 12 is the quorum and the majority.
Okay.
Now,
Enzorecto, kalaban ang katiwalian at kasinungalingan, kakampi sa katotohanan at kabutihan.
Senator Alan Peter Cayetano says he is still the legitimate, legal, and moral Senate President, and that this afternoon's reorganization was an illegal coup d'etat. Is he correct?
Before I answer the question of whether he's correct or wrong, at this point, Alan is like a king without a kingdom because all the Senate committees are now under the control of the majority headed by GATCHALIAN. And therefore, he is a lame duck for all practical purposes. Wala na pong susunod sa kanya. Okay, now having said that, it's about time that this impasse be resolved, because the impasse is already affecting public interest. Bills are not passed because of the impasse in the leadership. So it was to the public interest that the impasse be resolved. There is no doubt that legal issues will be raised, but there is a precedent on this in the Senate, and it involved me personally.
Yes, yes. Recall that time for us, May 5, 2015, as cited by Senator GATCHALIAN. Tell us about it.
Well, at that time, out of the 24 members of the Senate, 4 were abroad, and 3 were not in the custody of the police for offenses for which for cases that they were facing. Therefore, out of the 24, 7 senators were out of reach. Is that within the reach of the Senate? Because 4 were abroad and 3 were under the custody of the police authorities. Therefore, we considered as membership 17 and based the quorum on 17 senators, not on any other number, because 17 are the senators who are not under the control of the authorities, nor are they abroad. In other words, they are free to attend. They are capable of attending the Senate, and therefore, for purposes of precedent, there is a precedent in so far as the Senate is concerned, and I was the Senate President at that time. Of course, there's another precedent, Avelino Cuenco case, wherein the Supreme Court ruled that the quorum should be determined on the basis of members of the legislature who are actually available, who are excluding those who are beyond the reach of the of the institution, like if abroad, or if you are under the custody of the police authorities. So there are legal precedents that can be cited by the new majority, and says a principle in law is the presumption of regularity in the performance of one's functions for the better order of governance, so that there is a presumption of regularity in what happened today insofar as change of leaders is concerned. Until that, what happened today is voided by the Supreme Court, it enjoys the presumption of regularity, and the public can act accordingly, and recognize the need or the validity of the Senate action starting tomorrow.
Okay. Senator Drilon, is the Senate presidency vacant, or because this is the contention of Senator Lacson, or is the Senator Cayetano still hold the position because he cannot be replaced since they need 13 votes?
The position of the group of Senator GATCHALIAN is that only 12 votes are needed to declare all positions vacant. And that's exactly what they did. They declared the position, all the positions in the Senate, from the Senate President to the Senate President pro tempore, to all the chairman of the committees, to the membership in the committees. All of those were declared vacant by a vote of only 12, because 12 is the quorum and the majority.
Okay.
Now, beyond that, in so far as the Senate President is concerned, they had to produce 13, because that's what the Constitution requires. 13 majority of all the members of the Senate, which is 24, and therefore they must produce 13. They only had 12, and therefore could not elect GATCHALIAN as the regular Senate President. And therefore what they did was to consider GATCHALIAN as an acting Senate President, considering that he was elected as pro tempore and the position of Senate President has become vacant.
In your case, in 2015, there was no challenge to what you did. It was not brought before the Supreme Court or...
No, there was no challenge. No challenge when that transpired. But indeed, it is a precedent insofar as Senate practices and rules are concerned.
Okay. Senator Drilon, the Secretariat did not want to call the roll earlier. Was that also within the practice of the Senate?
I did not witness that particular episode, says I'm sorry.
Okay, so the Senate Secretary did not call the roll, and so they had to ask the assistant, the second in rank, to do it. What was the significance of the refusal?
Nothing legally, nothing that creates a legal infirmity. Anybody could call the roll. The Senate President or the Majority Leader can call the roll. It is just by tradition that the Secretary of the Senate, being a civil servant, is given that authority. And that is because at the start of a Congress, there is no duly elected, at the opening of the session, the secretary opens the session because there is no the elected representatives have not yet assumed office. But to repeat my answer, anybody can call the roll in this particular case.
All right. Now, the king without a kingdom has issued just now a memo instructing the Senate staff that the hearing of the Blue Ribbon Committee will proceed tomorrow. How do we now, what happens now when if he insists and other senators, now the minority, insist on holding this hearing, troop to the Senate tomorrow morning?
It happened during my time also. It was not only in the committee, but in the Senate itself. When there was a wrap session, and if I recall correctly, it was Senator Blas Ople who was elected Senate President, replacing me. And we did not recognize the session. We called it a wrap session, and because of that, we directed the secretariat not to record the proceedings. And that can be done tomorrow if, in fact, the Blue Ribbon hearing takes place. The Senate Secretariat, who is under the control of the majority and the Senate President, will be directed not to provide administrative services. So there's no official record of what will transpire. So they can hold hearings for as long as they want, but there is no official record of what transpired.
But they can be allowed inside the premises, use the facilities. This will be a dilemma for the Senate staff, Senator. You know,
No.
of course, they
No.
won't know who to
There's no-
follow.
There is no
They'll be
dilemma.
afraid.
There is no dilemma. There is no dilemma because there is a presumption of regularity. The of officers led by GATCHALIAN can assume control and provide the direction.
So it's possible a rump, well, not session, but hearing can be held, but it won't be official.
That's correct insofar as official records are concerned. It did not take place because the staff, there is no record of what transpired.
Now, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano also said that this will delay the impeachment because of changes in the rules. Will it?
I don't really know what he was referring to, which rule he was referring to. But in fact, there is no provision in the Constitution that it must be the Senate President who should preside over an impeachment trial of the Vice President. The only instance that the Constitution specifies the presiding officer is in the impeachment of the President, where the Chief Justice is specifically designated by the Constitution to be the presiding officer. I repeat that, only in the impeachment trial of the President. The rest, no such rule. Of course, the Senate rules, I think, provides that the Senate President is the presiding officer, shall preside over the impeachment trial, but that's a rule which can be changed by the Senate, because that is an internal rule of the Senate and not a substantive law which has to be amended.
But when the Senate returns on July 6, it will be the start of the impeachment trial. And with the vacancy of the Senate presidency, how will it now function?
The Senate will not return because the Senate, by by the legislative calendar, will adjourn sine die on Friday, the 5th of June. And when come July 6, it will be the impeachment court will hold a trial. The Senate will not hold a session.
I see. So how now, without with the Senate presidency vacant, who will open the trial? How will it go?
Well, in the same manner that the question is raised on tomorrow's Blue Ribbon Committee, the same issues are should be resolved in order to allow or to enable the impeachment court to follow. In other words, the impeachment court will be called to order by the Senate President. In this case, the acting Senate President is Win Gatchalian.
What can the new minority do to scuttle the proceedings?
Go to court and get an injunction. I mean, that's the remedy available to them.
However, the court has shown judicial restraint, particularly in the 1949 case of Avellino and Cuenco, where they did not really delve into the internal rules of the Senate. Am I right, Senator?
That's correct. They've considered the issue as involving a political question, the resolution of which is better left to the political agencies of government, in this case, the Senate. So the ruling was, we will not interfere in the case because it involves a political question which pertains to the organization of the Senate.
So once again, the start of the impeachment trial, part 2, has been thrown into question. Is that the correct conclusion to make?
I have to admit that questions will be raised. Questions will be raised, but to me, it's better to have questions raised. There is a presumption of regularity. Proceed with the work. Let them go to the Supreme Court, or let the case be brought to the Supreme Court, and we continue with the work until the Supreme Court says otherwise. That's how our bureaucracy functions. You cannot stop work in the bureaucracy, or for that matter, in this particular case, in the impeachment court, because questions are raised on its validity. As I would repeat, for better order, there is a presumption of legality in what happened, and let those who are questioning validity of what transpired go to the courts, and until the courts decide otherwise, we proceed with the legal structure that results from this conflict, because otherwise, to rule otherwise would bring us back to a situation we did not want, and that is an impasse in the trial of the impeachment court.
We can't help but think, was this part of the grand plan after all, to somehow prevent it from happening? I'm referring to the impeachment trial. To
I
create
don't.
this chaos and
There is chaos, there is instability, but it is the necessary result of politics. Is the result of the election contest in 2028. So all of that come into play, and we are in this situation where questions are raised. But this is not the first time that this has happened in our political history. If you look at our case books, case history, there are a number of cases, some of which are already being cited today. But that's democracy. We should not be surprised that in a society where people are free, questions will be raised. But that strengthens us, in my mind, rather than weakens our system.
so in your assessment, we could say all's well that ends well, that now we have a functioning Senate, and we're no longer, witnessing a deadlock.
That is correct. In other words, instead of a situation of an impasse, now you have, at least we are moving. It is the right of the other side to question, but there is a mechanism under our system, which is the Supreme Court, which will adjudicate this conflict. But we have to move. And what the Senate today, and particularly Senator Chis Escudero did, was something that public interest required. Otherwise, you will be you'll be stuck with a 11 deadlock, which has never happened in history. You know, so it is best that it be resolved, not a perfect solution, certainly, because there are questions raised, but that it allows the system to function is something that we all desire to happen.
We thank you for your wisdom and sharing your insights with us, former Senate President Franklin Drilon.
Bunyog, bunyog, halikan na kasama ka. Bunyog, kapag buklod ay may pag-asa. Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, isa ang pananaw. Sa bagong Pilipinas ang bunyog isisigaw. Bunyog.